So, good evening, councillors, officers, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Corporate Governance Committee, today, the 20th of March 2024. Members are reminded that this meeting is being live streamed on the council's YouTube pages. Do we have any apologies for absence tonight?
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Sanderson, also Councillor Howe, and I believe, is it Councillor Clark? Yeah, sorry, Councillor Jeff Clark as well.
Thank you. We believe that Councillor Cadwary will be with us, but slightly late. Yeah. Thank you. So, minutes of the previous meeting, councillors. Are you all in agreement that I sign the minutes of the previous meeting, which was actually on, I remember, it's the 24th of January.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got slight confusion here. 24th of January 2024. Are you all in favour of me signing those minutes? Mm-hmm. Thank you, councillors. Yeah. Copy.
Oh, yeah. Hold on, we've got a question.
Right, a moment. Yeah, that's right. The page total is less than the number of pages in the report. Yes, is there a reason for that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I can amend that. It's a minor technical thing, but thank you for pointing it out.
Okay. Otherwise, happy for me to sign. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Batts-Raving.
Sorry, mate.
Welcome. Agenda item 2, members' interests. Do members have any interests to declare this evening? No interest to declare. Thank you. Item 3, then on to item 3 on the agenda. I'd like to invite Karen Sutton, Director of Finance and Corporate Resources, to present the Corporate Risk Register report. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Yes, I'm bringing the Corporate Risk Register to you. These are the main corporate risks, not the full risk register. And the risk of repeating myself from last month, this is a risk register that doesn't vary on a frequent basis. So it is pretty consistent with what you saw last time. What I have included this time with the risk register, which was a request from last month, is a copy of the risk movement report. Now, this is a visual reflection of where our corporate risks are, and it shows the inherent and the residual risks. So to read the report, the number in the circle on the chart relates to the grid reference on page 2. Where a circle is coloured red, that means its inherent risk is high risk, it's a red risk. However, the mitigation that's been put in place has moved that down to being less likely. So in most cases, those are now an amber. There are some instances where you've got an amber circle, still an amber square. And that means that it started off as being a mid-level risk. As some mitigation which has reduced the risk, it still stays in amber. But it hasn't reduced it down to a lower risk category. Those two risks which are highlighted in white, that is where the mitigated risk and the residual risk is the same. And that's where we don't believe we can take mitigating actions to reduce the impact on that. Are there any specific questions on the risk register, please?
Mr. Jennings.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Karen, for the report. I think there may have been some misunderstanding about the movement report that I'd be interested in, which is actually if the risk has moved, where we've ended up, the residual risk has moved from one copy of the risk register to the next risk register. Now, in this case, none of the risks have moved, but I think it'd be, it wasn't made clear in the report that none of the risks had moved. So it was only the fact that I'd gone back and cross-checked it against the last risk register and realised there weren't any changes. So if there was some way of just an overview of saying, in this case, none of the risks have moved, or potentially, risk 7 has moved from this to that because of this since the last time that we saw it. That's all.
I'm very happy to include that as a narrative going forward. And if there are any other changes to the report that would be helpful for members, if you could flag those to me, that would be helpful.
I think Councillor Hodson-Jones, I think the first time.
It's not really a question on. I just wanted to comment about, if I understand this correctly, movement from inherent risk to residual risk, only risk 15 has moved more than one square. Is that correct? In other words, but then I don't understand why on the chart we show several. It's because if you move from square 8 to square 6, it looks like 2 movements, but it's only risk 15 where you've moved from a very high 16 to a high 8. So it's the only one where the actual movement in squares is significant. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that is the case. Yes.
Sorry. So if I understand that correctly, the 15 is the only one where mitigation has had a significant impact on the residual risk, and most of the items have only moved marginally, or in 2 cases not at all. That calls into question the effectiveness of our mitigation strategies, and is there not more that we can do to mitigate risk? And why would that be? Perhaps we need to do a deeper dive into what our risk mitigation tools are.
So I think there are 2 factors to that. One is these are corporate risks. So these are the big elephants which are typically difficult to tackle, or they're ones where actually we don't know what the risk is going to be. We know there's going to be a risk there, but at the moment we don't know. For example, one of the risks that we struggle to mitigate against is what's going to happen if there's a general election. Now, if anyone in this room can tell me what's going to be the outcome of a general election and what that's going to do to our funding, our policies and such, then I'd very much like a conversation with them, because we can build that into our mitigation. But those are, no, we're putting things on here so that we are raising awareness, and that in itself is part of our mitigation, but we can't score that mitigation. And the other factor is sometimes our what we can do to mitigate is limited by the cost of doing that mitigation in the first place. So, for example, cyber insurance, which is one of our big ones, we have in the past looked at whether it would be appropriate for us to take out insurance, and that would significantly mitigate. However, the cost of the insurance plus the cost of the controls that we would have to put in place to make that insurance valid are so high that it takes away any benefits that we would get from that. And then we look to organisations like the LGA to help us mitigate should we get a cyber attack. But we hope that the controls that we've put in place through ICT and such like will remove those. But again, no, they can only go so far. No, I don't, but that's the latest date it could be.
Thank you, Councillor. So, Councillor Ferguson, you have a comment here.
So I just wanted to comment on Councillor Jennings' comments about the presentation of the report, which I think is a big improvement since last time I've seen it. But I think at ONS with the corporate performance report, we've been on a bit of a journey where we've put a lot of effort into formatting those reports so that you spend less time trying to interpret the risks or interpret the data and more time discussing it as well. So one of the things I'd like to do now that I've inherited this part of the portfolio is to perhaps get Dan Buckridge to have a look at some of these things and think about how we can present them better. At County Council, I chair the Utilities, Environment and Green Investment Committee, in which we manage the risk of huge solar farm projects and big kind of domestic, big urban heat pump networks, which are millions of pounds, and we've gone on a bit of a journey there into changing the way we present risks and more. So if we could have the same journey here, I think it'd be better for us to have those conversations if we didn't have to look down a long list and we had individual reports for each one. So I'm going to try and do that, hopefully with Dan's help, although I haven't told John Taylor yet, and hopefully in the coming months we'll be able to have a better view of our risks and understand them better because of that.
Thank you, Councillor. I think Councillor Gray, you're next. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Much appreciated, and would echo the comments made about thanks for the work that's been done on here. So I have a presentational question, if I may, Karen, on your nice risk movement report, where we've got down the side the likelihood. In my world, we call them probabilities. Have you? We're talking here about words that mean different things to different people. Do you talk almost certain? Does that mean? I mean, that almost certainly means it's going to happen this year. So it's kind of like a 50%, 100% chance. Could we express what these mean in terms of how often you expect them to happen? Because I've seen that in other forums that I'm in about what we mean. So unlikely might mean 1 in. I would say that what unlikely is like 1 in 100 in insurance terms, but you would probably say that it's like 1 in 20 or something like that. Have you got that? Oh, sorry. I said, Dad, must try harder. Would it be possible to put that underneath there? It's from a presentational point of view, taking on board the council. So if I could move on to, so one of the questions I've got then is we've already touched on cyber risk, and I would, you've got a value for money judgment to make here, and I do understand that. I suppose I would question that if we look at it from a point of view of if we did nothing on cyber, surely it would be almost certain that we would get hacked. I mean, if nobody did any training and we didn't have anything in place, it would be almost certain that we would fall victim to ransomware within a matter of weeks or months. And so I wonder if you're kind of selling to the point that was made earlier, you might be selling yourself slightly short there, because I think that risk probably sits up in that top right-hand corner. And then you're going through the actions that the IT department are doing, sort of obviously through cybersecurity. That's certainly bringing you down a notch, but then you need that second piece of work, which is getting people not to be stupid and click on ridiculous links and do things that they shouldn't be doing. So just something to take away and reflect on there. On that latter point, I noticed that we make the point about training. That's, actions to be taken is training around cybersecurity. How progressed are we? Because it's still in the actions to be taken. I guess I know it's a permanent action that needs to be undertaken, but I wonder if you can just give the committee a flavour of what that looks like and how satisfied you are with the rollout of that, given the conversations we had earlier on.
So the training is ongoing. It's it's part of the mandatory training when you start here, and there is continued training, albeit, as Nikki said earlier, it's difficult for us to track that. We do have software also on our emails. It's very frustrating every time an email comes. If you send me an Excel spreadsheet, I don't get an Excel spreadsheet. I get a PDF of it, and if I need to see the Excel spreadsheet, then I have to send the email back through virus checking to ensure that there's nothing you've embedded in there that comes to me. So we already have that inherent check as a first standard, and it's also, as in many other companies, it's scraping off any emails which are received within the organisation which it deems dangerous. And then you have to separately go in and usually it's junk mail. So just delete that and thanks for blocking it. We did some training, it's probably about 15 months back now, specifically with managers where we had a couple of officers from organisations, LGA, local government organisations, who had suffered a cyber attack, talking through what the impact to them was, how it impacted their services, how long it took them down for, what they had to do to get their services back up. So that made it a very real thing for our officers to see that actually this isn't something just sitting on the horizon which might happen. This is something which happened to an organisation like us who had measures in place, but no, in both instances it was a virus embedded in an email which caused all the issue. But one organisation was very blunt in that they said, we just gave up trying to recover. There was no point in us trying to recover our systems. It was quicker and more straightforward for us to start again. So that message was very much brought home to our members. It's still talked about now, our members, our managers, it's still talked about now because it has such an impact on them. And that is something which I think is a good thing to do going forward, as well as doing all the statutory training. It's getting those real messages back to managers so they know it's not just a theoretical risk. This could really happen.
Thank you. Next thing we have Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you. Just a couple of points, if I may. I did raise at the last meeting the issue of these abbreviations, and it was minuted. And unfortunately, they continue. I don't see any improvement in that whatsoever, which frankly I find disappointing. And again, this is not an easy read. There is a display further down in the agenda, a different point, agenda item, but which for me is a good example of how to sort of provide an easy read document. So perhaps we'll touch on that later. So, when are we going to start putting at least the first abbreviation in full bracket and then maybe continue to use it again? I'm sorry, this is quite basic, but it's infuriating each time to sort of read it in the same format and try and work out, yourselves what each abbreviation actually means. And remember, we, with respect, we sit on various committees, so it would be sort of courtesy to sort of have these finally in full form on the first instance. And my second point is I don't see anything in here about risk to the public at our core sites, our One Leisure. I would have thought we've just been talking earlier about sort of accidents, etc. And, we're sort of homing in on the general election, which will probably affect every man in the land, man and woman, but we don't seem to make, mention the issue of a possible accident or worse, a death at one of our sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I answer your questions in reverse order? That's probably more straightforward. So these are only our corporate risks. We do have service risks as well, and I can share with you the risks that we have for One Leisure, and that very, very much looks at all of the risks to not just the public, to our staff as well, be it health risks, we've mentioned the cardiac arrests which have happened at the centres already, chemical risks, there's a lot of chemical handling there, the risks from moving equipment around, the risks that might happen to the public if the equipment's not set up properly. So if you wish, I can share those that register with you. But if we were to bring all of those risks onto our corporate risk, those are risks which are dealt with at a service level, and we make sure the training and the mitigations are known and understood at that level, and that's where they are managed. The corporate risks are the ones which go across the whole organisation, so that's why they're not brought up to there, and we try and keep them not at a minimum level, but the corporate risks should not be running into the tens and hundreds of risks. And if you look across all our service risks, I think we have now tipped over into over 100 risks across all the services. So that information is there, but it's just not brought forward onto the corporate register. You said, I do recall you saying last meeting about the text on here and whether we could get rid of the three-letter acronyms and such. There's a little bit of a challenge around that because these reports aren't done by a central administration team. These reports are completed by the individual service managers. They are responsible for going in, reviewing their risks and writing the updates. So getting 50 people to go in and amend how they write a risk. First of all, we're focusing on making sure we're getting the quality of the risk in there. I appreciate it. It's harder for you as a member to read, but I'd much rather that we had the quality of the information in there rather than getting onto the sorting out the three-letter acronyms. That's part of the culture change we need to do, and we will work towards it. The other thing is that once a risk is in there, we can't go in and edit the risk control or mitigation or the updates. You have to go in and do a completely new one. So to go in and change 200 words of text to amend one bit actually takes a considerable amount of time. So that's why we haven't progressed that through yet, but that is something that we are trying to address going forwards. But it's not going to be an overnight fix on that one unless we pay for additional resource to come in and do that. But at this stage, that's not something I see as being good value to the organisation, given the other pressures that we have. So apologies for that, but we're not going to have a quick fix.
Thank you, Karen. Stephen, did you want to come on that point?
Just that we had interviews today for an independent person, and one of the candidates was a plain speak champion and did highlight the amount of jargon in reports and demanded that if he was to take the role that he would have to have a glossary. So I think, whereas going through and enforcing a new writing style on officers might be difficult, we could go through, list the things we don't understand and add them to a glossary would be less difficult. We'd have to, I'm sure it would get out of date pretty quickly and would have to police it quite often, but I think it would be a huge improvement, perhaps at a lesser cost.
Yeah, I was just going to make the exact same point, really. I think, that's probably a compromise that would, not ideal, obviously, but as Karen's shown the difficulty of, fully answering your needs, I think, some sort of glossary in amongst the, or appended to the report might be a compromise that might be the least worst solution, so to speak. Yeah. Councillor Harvey, a question.
Thank you, Chair. You've touched on the operational risks. Is there anything on the operational risk register that you think the committee should be aware of?
So at this stage, I have to admit that the service risks have all just been through review as part of our annual service planning. And I was on leave last week and I haven't had a chance to look at where all those risks have changed. I suggest that maybe I bring a report to the next meeting, the May meeting, although I know we have quite a heavy agenda for that, to identify any of those risks which are have changed significantly or are sitting in the red high-level boxes.
And just following on that, we know that obviously there are complications around intranet access to members, but is there any scope, possibility for spreadsheets being distributed out to members as opposed to the actual physical documents like this one. Spreadsheets might be more easy to manipulate and also less difficult to share. I just wonder whether there's an opportunity there.
I can certainly share this document as a Excel spreadsheet. The risk movement report is produced as a PDF, so that's the only form I can distribute it in.
Yeah, I was thinking more about the service risks. If you wanted to have a view of the, as you say, rather large number of service risks, but really wanted to have a go at looking through them, then there might be an opportunity there.
Yes, we can look at downloading those into an Excel file. We might end up with the... we have an issue sometimes on the narrative where it truncates it. I think Councillor Gray picked it up last time as the 2 dots at the end of text. That may be an issue when I download it into Excel, but if anyone wants the full text on that, then if they tell me the risk number, we can go in and extract that.
Thank you, Karen. Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Butler, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my concern is 347 on the risk reference, the development management risk. It's a pretty damning report, I feel. Council lacks skills, resources for economic growth. We've been in this very high position for quite some time now. I just wondered what's happening. Are we finding it difficult to recruit officers, or the quality of the staff? I don't know. It concerns me a bit because it's one of the mainstays of this council is planning. We had a meeting on Monday night, and in the last month we've lost 2 appeals, one with costs. So it's quite concerning for us on the development management side. I don't know whether you can help at all.
That's not one of my areas, so I wouldn't want to guess an answer to that, but I can follow up and get an answer to that question.
Councillor Hodgson-Jones.
Sure, sorry, it might be a good question for Councillor Sanderson at full council next week, perhaps.
Good, yeah. Worth bearing in mind, yes. Councillor Hodgson-Jones, thank you.
Thank you. Karen, can I bring you back to the general election risk and the way it's described and presented in terms of the impact, what have you? Anyone looking at this cold would think that the general election itself is the risk. But I think that that's a misdescription of the real risk here, is that a general election as an event isn't of itself going to introduce any specific risks. When I first saw it, I thought you were looking at risks around actually managing and conducting the general election. The risks, as I understand it, that you're really concerned about here are the risks of legislative changes or changes in central government funding. But those aren't actually related to a general election as such. They can occur at any time, and it doesn't require a change of government for there to be a change of legislation or a change of funding. And therefore, what you really ought to be looking at is looking at the risk of legislative changes having an impact on council services, and separately the risk of central government funding changes having an impact on our resources. And both of those risks are actually quite distinct one from another and are unrelated to a general election per se. And I also see that the likelihood of changes of legislation might increase after a general election, but the impact isn't going to bite for several years after the general election, because even if a general election took place and there's a change of government, legislation is not going to be instant, and its effect isn't going to be instant, because quite often, even once it's gone through the legislative programme and a bill has received royal assent, the practical application of that is going to require statutory instruments, which might be another 1, 2, 3 years down the line. So I come back to the likelihood and the timing of that risk is a constant rather than a sporadic, and the impact may vary from time to time, but it's the legislative impact is very distinct and different from the financial impact, which is an ongoing annual budget resource issue, and is therefore something that happens every year, that we have a financial settlement which may or may not be beneficial, and therefore ought to be a regular level 4 risk. And the only mitigation that we as a council can do is by managing our resources to have sufficient reserves and sufficient resilience in our operations that we can adjust to that risk. And therefore I think that particular risk that you've identified there needs to be separated out into its components, and the implications need to be given more consideration.
Thank you. I'm happy to take that back to the rest of SLT. I think when this risk was put on, when I think where we were in the council year, it was when we were looking at the MTFS. And the risk of the general election on the MTFS is, you recall back to the March discussion, or February discussions, around rebaselining and NNDR changes. And, we're working on the basis of what we know at the moment. That rebaselining will come in 2026, and we'll see a significant drop in our income. We see that against the other, I think the best way, but political views which are being put out there, that actually the whole of business rates is going to be scrapped and changed, and that is going to happen very, very quickly. So whereas we're working and planning our council activity, because financials do underpin all the activity we do, based upon the best knowledge we have at the moment, something which goes through the budget will be impacted and implemented far, far quicker than normal legislative change. So I absolutely accept what you're saying about splitting it into funding and legislation. We can look at that, but that is why it is such a risk to us.
So we've got these various risks, but we don't have an owner identified for risks. And I wonder if that's something that could be added to the chart to show who is actually responsible for managing the risk and who owns the risk.
So we do have that information within our risk management system. It's not one of the standard reports that's currently produced, so I can add it manually, but it's not something which is automatically generated. We are due an upgrade to our system, and that's something where I'm waiting for some information from Cambridge City, who have already been through the upgrade, just to understand what the impact will be on us and what pitfalls we have to watch out for, trying to risk mitigate doing an upgrade. But I'm hoping that will, no, the one thing that they've come back to us has said is that we get far more flexibility around the reporting. So that's something I hope we can do in the future. But we do have risk owners for all the risks within the system.
Thank you, Karen. Do we have any further questions on this agenda item, councillors? Nope. Okay. In that case, we've had a full discussion. I think it's a useful discussion on the register tonight. So you've had your opportunities to make comments, and you've done so. Actions with Karen to go back on a couple of points there. So we considered the report, the risks of the organisation and the management of them. You requested to bear that in mind. Moving on then to agenda item 4, which is implementation of internal audit actions, and onto item 4, I'd like to invite Karen Sutton again, Director of Finance and Corporate Resources, to present this report. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, so outstanding actions, we still have 17 overdue actions. However, I am pleased to say we have closed out one action in the last month, but we did get a further overdue action falling into it. Over the last 90 days, we have implemented 19 actions, and that's a rolling period. So if you look back at last month's report, I think it was slightly higher, so our implementation rate has dropped a little bit. But I'm pleased to say we have still closed 61 audit actions in the last 12 months period. And we currently have 36 open actions, which we are pursuing to get those closed out as soon as possible. If I look at the 17 overdue actions, 17 is still not a good number. However, it is still considerably better than where we were. And I'm pleased to say that I expect some of these actions to be closed out before the next meeting. So if I go through the Appendix 1, all of what was termed the small works contract actions, we should have a new contract in place from the 1st of April. It won't be a small works contract because that would have been an inappropriate procurement route for us to go down. What we're actually, what we've actually tendered and will be agreeing is a civil works medium-term contract, and that will cover all of the works that we need to do around buildings, car park repairs, our estates management, where we need to do things like a window gets broken or something, and that is we've gone out for a 3+1+1 framework agreement on that, so we'll have a new agreement in place for the next at least 3 years, with the ability to extend it to 5. And we then need to make sure that we're monitoring the spend, which used to go through with other contractors, to make sure that we're picking up all those odd areas, and they are putting it all through the right area now. So hope to have that closed out, so that will reduce 4 risks off the register. The other risks actions I wanted to comment upon, their action 1661, the ICT procurement and contract management. This is going to be a risk which I think is going to be difficult to close out because it doesn't have an endpoint on it. So I'm wish to go back to the ICT procurement manager and our internal audit team and agree what we need to do to close that out, because as they put in their comments, it's an ongoing piece of work, and an ongoing piece of work can never be closed out. If it's something that we need to do constantly, then it's yes, we're doing that, yes, we're demonstrating we can do it, and then we can close the audit out. And then we still have the actions outstanding on social value in procurement. There are a couple of items on those. One is we have started the training on that. So our procurement contract people are working on that training, and they will start now passing that out to the wider organisation. We do already consider social value in our procurements, but it's raising the awareness of that. But we have also said that we'll put in a new social value procurement policy, and quite bluntly, we haven't had the resource to do that. With all the activity that's now coming through post-COVID, with the big projects that we're doing, with all of the sustainability work, it's driving a huge amount of activity through procurement, and we can either do our procurement correctly, or we can write a a new policy. So we're looking at alternative ways now to get this procurement policy written. So I apologise that that is still outstanding, but it is very much at the front of our agenda for completion at the moment. Were there any other questions on the outstanding audit actions?
Councillor Gray.
Thank you for that very comprehensive update, Karen. Much appreciated. And there is a theme here, isn't there, around procurement? So can you just refresh the committee's understanding of how much people resource you have for procurement? And this is obviously not a criticism of individuals, because they're probably working under a significant amount of strain, but it's a very complicated area. And do you feel that that's an area that you may need to invest in?
So procurement, at the moment, we have one full-time procurement manager, and we have a part-time administration resource. I think it's 0.6 FTE, so a full-time equivalent person doing that. I have flagged to the rest of SLT that we do need more procurement resource. There's three reasons for it. One is the amount of activity we have coming through for procurement at the moment. If we can continue to deliver at this level of grant-funded work and additional projects, we need more resource in there. And we need to make sure that we're building into our grant applications the cost of providing that procurement. Secondly, if we're going to deliver a new policy, and if we're delivering a social value policy, it's not just an update of what we do currently. It needs to be wider. We need resource to be able to do that. More concerning to me on the procurement side is that we have new procurement regulations coming in, and whilst they reduce the number of procurement routes we go down, there's actually a huge amount more work that we need to do around the procurement, as in we need to publish our 12 months procurement plan in advance, and there's a lot more front-ended work that we need to be doing than we are currently, and the only way we're going to achieve that is to bring in more resource, so it has been flagged already.
Thank you, Karen. Any further question?
Well, just really a comment to you. I mean, how do we sort of strengthen? I mean, we've got the executive councillor here, but I think as a committee we ought to be expressing our opinion through to the chief executive. I'm sure you were doing it very forcefully, but also through to the democratic executives, that this is an area that does need investment. Now I've been dragged into the world of public procurement policies, and I've got 3 full-time staff working on this, procurement manager and 2 people working for her. And I can't believe that we've got, we will have a fraction of the numbers that you're dealing with here. When I read things like framework agreements, they are hideously complicated. And I think we really do, it's an area where I'd like to know, Chair, how as a panel we can kind of express, or a committee rather, that we can express our feeling that this investment needs to take place, so that we've got what we need in order to be able to effectively function.
So I have a meeting with the managing director on Friday to go through this and other audit and risk functions, and I agree with you as well. I think there's also a question of resiliency. If we've got such small staff numbers, very easy for those people to be off sick or something to happen to them, and then we're completely scuppered as well. So I will make that point to her on Friday, and I'm sure that the chair will also make similar points.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hodson-Jones.
Yeah, yes, just begs the question as to why this isn't on the risk register of the corporate risks, because procurement has an impact, not just financial impact where you get the wrong price for the wrong goods, or you buy the wrong goods and therefore have to redo things, but it also has reputational impacts as well. So if there are audit actions on procurement that simply aren't progressing as expected, then we should be looking at whether we should have on our risk register something around procurement risks as well.
Again, I would take that back and discuss that with SLT.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
So are we allowed to make like a formal recommendation for that exact point of like for the SLT to look into employing another member of staff, at least one member of staff in the procurement team? Is that something we are allowed to do?
I would see something that as something we would take up to Cabinet to raise them. Councillor Ferguson may be able to clarify that for me, but and I would also be prepared to raise it, obviously, with the Managing Director as well. So, is this something that Cabinet would,
I think it would be helpful to have a formal kind of request from this committee. Would help me in making that request as well. So it's not just me asking. So I think absolutely I would. If you could make that, I'm not sure how this committee works, but if you can make that recommendation, I think it would be helpful for me in making the point to the senior leadership team and to the rest of the Cabinet.
Okay, so that recommendation should be minuted and absorbed by SLT, as well as other means I can use to raise it with the senior management.
Sorry, Chair, I also endorse Councillor Jones's recommendation that we should probably put it on the risk register, so we'll talk about that as well, but that seems like a very sensible thing to suggest as well.
In that context, are we happy that that is not currently covered in the existing corporate risk register? Do you see it as something that needs to be added, Karen?
I can't see it on the corporate risk. I do believe it is down as a service risk. Within corporate risk, it will be part of the capacity concerns, but I accept the comments on the risk to reputation on not getting our procurement right.
Thank you. Councillor Blackwell.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. I actually would like to compliment whoever presented this report, because this is a lovely display and an easy read. I don't know whether one author was involved here, but it's, apart from the abbreviations, I'll always keep going back to that, I'm afraid, until they're improved. Yes, that's probably a good example of displaying a document that's easy on the eye. I just wanted to ask too about this fuel tank that's mentioned. This is in Action Reference 1680, page 28, 50,000 litre tank. Just be interesting to know where it is. Is it full? And what exact substance does it contain? Thank you.
That's quite simple. So it's out at Eastfield House. It's where we run all the refuse trucks from and other heavy vehicles. And at the moment, it has been full of diesel, but at the moment we're doing the HVO trial. And you're going to challenge me on what HVO stands for, and I've completely forgotten. It is, vegetable, hydrogenated vegetable oil. So it's reusing vegetable oil rather than the previous diesel to make us to add to our green agenda and to make us better using it. It's a reasonably straightforward switch to do, and they're trialling on the trucks at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Just to say, if you haven't been to Eastfield House, I thoroughly recommend it because it's lots of where lots of the hardest working people who work for this council work, and it's actually a fantastic operation to see where all the refuse lorries are, where all the CCTV is, and seeing the workshop as well. So if you have a word with Andy Rogan, he'd probably be delighted to take you around because it's worth seeing. Because I think we think of HDC of being at Pathfinder House, and of course there's lots of employees elsewhere doing lots of really interesting things. So I recommend that.
Thank you, Councillor. It's certainly worth bearing in mind for those of us who haven't been there, including myself. Any other questions in context of agenda item 4, audit actions? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. So action number 1658, for starters, sorry, I can't get my computer up. It says in there, it's waiting for approval. Chase the COP has changes made to incline new thresholds and terminology waiting for approval. From who?
I will have to come back to you on that one. This was an update made to the report last week when I was on leave, and I only spotted it today, and I don't know what the new thresholds are, so I need to go back and challenge on that one because, apologies, I don't know the answer.
Aaron, yes, please continue.
Thank you. Now, I don't want to sound facetious at all on this, but the small works contract that's been going on for 22 months, okay? And it's a 3-year contract that we're coming up for. So it's from what you said earlier, that from the 1st April, we'll have a new contract, it'll be up and running, and it's a 3-year contract. Should we be starting very soon to redo the next one because it's taken nearly 2 years to do that one?
No, because we have the option to have a 2-year extension on the 3-year framework, but also the original action was given out to the wrong team, and that was the that it sat as outstanding for a long time before it was looked at in detail and said, well, why is it with that team? Because they are not the people who are using it, and then we looked into it further and realised it was not the right action to be doing. So that is why it took so long, and I'm really, really, really pleased with it was picked up by the facilities management team. They worked across the council to pick up all the needs and to make sure that this will fulfil what is wanted going forwards. We have a proper contract owner for it now, so that means that when it does need to come up for retendering, for start, it will be on the contract manager and contract register. So we will know when it needs retendering, so we'll be able to do the work in advance. We have an owner for it, and we have definitions for what goes in there. So it should be a lot slicker next time.
So I'm just trying to find this. It was to do with the corporate enforcement policy that's up for renewal. It's only a couple of months late. But I took the privilege of downloading it and having a look through the current one. I would make a comment about at the beginning of it, what the date of the policy would be started, because I can't see that on this policy at the moment. And when the next one's due. I know it says on the very last paragraph about it being in 5 years, but it would be good to put on the front page that the next renewal date would be, so we can pick it up a lot quicker. It's okay, this. The only thing I would add on this would be on page 3 of it, the policy, would be, I would add to, the policy will cover the following service areas, and there's lots of things. It does say it's not exhaustive, but I'd like to see fly tipping written on there as well, as an enforcement service area, to actually explicitly put that there. I know it says antisocial behaviour and enviro crime. I don't know what enviro crime is, but I think it's environmental crime, possibly. Sorry, Stephen, I'll come back to you. And also, I noticed on the second paragraph, there is a spelling mistake. It should be if, not is, as well. It doesn't make sense otherwise.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
So, having spent a day last month with Ashley, who leads the enforcement team as well, I am fairly confident in saying that envirocrime is in fact fly tipping. It means dumping of materials as well. So I will check on that, but I think that envirocrime means fly tipping. But going back to earlier comments on jargon and things, I think it's not helpful to call it something that we should be using language which is easily readable by everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Any further questions on this agenda item, councillors? Karen.
Not specifically on the outstanding audit actions, but concerning internal audit. You will notice that the internal audit manager hasn't joined us this evening. That's because, unfortunately, she's on a period of absence at the moment. However, no, we are continuing with an alternate internal audit work. We are continuing to deliver the internal audit plan. BDO have been brought in to work on the ICT audits. They've commenced their first audit there. And as the contract we agreed with them allows other general audit work, we've commissioned them to undertake an assessment of the internal audit team, which was one of the LGA peer review actions outstanding. So whilst we are short of an internal audit manager at the moment, we're also getting support from Cambridge City with their internal audit manager. He's been very generous in picking up the phone up to me whenever I've called with a question. We are continuing with an internal audit at the moment. I just wanted to reassure the committee that that work is still ongoing.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, that's so helpful, reassuring. Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll close out this agenda item. So we've noted that. One moment, please.
Just to say, I think this is the moment where we need to just formally make the recommendation as mentioned by the portfolio lead and obviously by members of the committee. So we actually have it in black and white. So portfolio lead member then can, and obviously Karen can then wave it under relevant noses at the appropriate juncture, you know. So we just have the formal recommendation. So I've got something in black and white.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gray. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Yeah. Let's take a vote on that. All those in favour? You happy with that?
So should I just clarify, is this the recommendation to go to the SLT to say that we need to employ another member of staff?
Or to increase
that right?
resourcing generally?
Increase
Yeah.
resources? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah, not necessarily specifically that, but yes, to look at solutions to the resourcing shortfall. That's right, yeah. Thank you, David. Yeah. So noting, yes, thank you for that, and noting that. And also that we need to understand the approval mechanism for the shadow IT in audit item 1658. Those are the follow-ups on this agenda item. So moving on now to agenda item 5, the Corporate Governance Committee Progress Report. And I'll invite David Knight to present this report. Thank you.
Yes, very straightforward, Chair, members. This is, not wishing to sound too trite, a work in progress. It needs to be addressed. And between now and the next committee, I'll be endeavouring to make sure it is as up to date as physically possible.
Thank you, David. So on the report, I think on the second item, we have made progress. So I presume that it's okay to give you an update on where we are with the appointment of independent members to the committee. And councillors and myself and Joe have, along with Karen, have conducted interviews of 4 candidates for the independent members, and we have found 2 candidates who we are pleased to take on and who will be joining the committee in the normal course of events. It's probably premature to identify who they are. But we're very pleased with that result, and we think that's going to be hugely beneficial to the committee to have independent members joining us. Thank you. Councillor Jones.
I think it would be sensible for us to actually have a formal resolution from this committee to recommend to council, because I believe it's council that appoints them, not cabinet, that we should have a resolution from this committee meeting as to the appointment, and that will include adding the names of those people that we as a committee wish to appoint. And therefore, I think that needs to be done, and this is the only place where we can do it, because we shouldn't be waiting to our next meeting to make that recommendation, because otherwise it won't get up to full council in time for annual council.
Yes, I think you're right. It does make sense that we make a formal recommendation, so we should do so in this meeting.
Sorry, obviously I wasn't involved in the process, but are we, the people you've decided to appoint, doesn't have to be some sort of checks? Pardon my ignorance in the process, but I'm happy to be enlightened.
Absolutely, yes, that's right. So it's subject to due process in terms of the recruitment process itself, yes, but nevertheless we could perhaps make a recommendation subject to the recruitment process to proceed, if that's okay. Karen, thank you.
So just coming back, we had delegated authority from the committee previously to undertake the recruitment. So therefore is our recommendation to council already based upon the delegated authority that we had from that. So we still need to take them to council, but do we need to formally agree it at committee now to do that? So I haven't phrased it very well.
It's possible, I suppose, that we don't, but on the other hand, perhaps there's no harm in us actually doing it formally, just to give us a comfort level. I'm happy to do it that way. Yeah. So, if you could, Councillor Jennings.
Sorry, Chair, I'm slightly confused about what I would be supporting in this meeting, not having any knowledge about what the end of this process was. So I feel like I'm just giving another blank check. So without the names or anything, I don't think there's anything further this committee could add tonight.
As Karen says, you have given the Vice Chair and myself delegated authority to undertake the recruitment process. You're not in a position where you'll be able to vet the candidates having been approved by ourselves. That process has been done. So the next step seems logically to me is that it goes with our approval through to full council. I'm not quite sure what your concerns are. Perhaps you could elaborate.
So I was just confused about what we are being asked to do tonight that's over and above what we've already given as delegated authority to make it.
Well, that's right. And as I say, you may argue that there's no need for this committee to, having given the delegated authority, to actually do the approval process as well. As I say, I'm happy to really, frankly, to go either way. If you're happy to simply take the delegated authority process through and go to full council on that basis, then I'm fine with that as well. Yeah. If anybody has any concerns about doing it that way, we'll do it that way. Does anybody have concerns on that front?
So I'm just looking at democratic services to make sure that we don't get ourselves caught up in a situation where, having delegated it to you, you've made a decision. We suddenly find after this meeting's been closed and we wake up tomorrow morning that, we should have resolved to do this. Now it can't go to the next council meeting and it can't be dealt with. So I'm just looking to Dem Services really to reassure us on that.
Right. Obviously, Karen has more knowledge of this than me. I'm not trying to drop her in it, but I'm just saying, from my perspective, as I understand it, this committee has delegated the authority, and you can note the fact the authority was delegated to, Karen, Chair, etc., to undertake that, and you can now note that is taken place, and that council will be advised of that decision. Now, would you be happy with that? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we're all happy with that way forward. Yeah. Thank you.
So just for the record, not wishing to be over bureaucratic, but I'm a bureaucrat. So that is what we're going to do. Yes. So basically, all I'm thinking is in terms of like not trying to tie people in knots, but so that the committee is happy with that. Yes, please. Yes. Right. So I can take that as a definite. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Sorry to be, too Sir Humphrey like.
That's what you're here for. Okay. Councillor Gray, sorry.
Just on the report, and in the spirit of Councillor Blackwell over there, we've got the dreaded acronym TBC appears on quite a number of these. And when you look up what TBC means, it means, and I quote directly, I think, where's it gone? To be confirmed is one way of looking at it, or to be continued. And they do mean two quite different things. And I feel at the moment they look like they're being to be continued. And I would quite like the to be confirmed to be turned into actual dates so that we're actually doing stuff. Because otherwise we kind of drift along. And that's not a criticism of the chair or the vice chair, who I think have done a very good job in galvanising the committee. But if we could galvanise some dates, and maybe that's an action for between now and the next meeting, that would be really nice, I think.
As I said earlier, my intention is between now and the next committee to turn the to be confirms into actually something with a tangible date, because as you say, it's a bit like a blancmange at the moment.
Yep, completely fair point. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions on the committee progress report from councillors? Councillor Harvey.
Sorry, just wondering, Karen, if you're able to give us an update on the internal audit and the yearly.
I haven't brought the updated plan with us tonight, so I can provide that for the next meeting. But we are still progressing it.
Thank you. Okay. If there are no further questions on this agenda item, I will conclude. Sorry, Karen Sullivan-Jones.
Just, it's part of our ongoing obligations is to progress the audit of the accounts, and we haven't had any update. We've not had the auditors turn up to this meeting. I don't think they turned up to the last meeting either. Are our external auditors actually working on the audit, and when can we see some progress? I think this needs to be on the committee, on the Corporate Governance Committee progress report for the next meeting, and we need to see some clarification as to when our accounts are actually going to be audited.
I think Karen can give you some news on that one. Thank you.
So Mark Hodgson, our partner at EY, will be attending the next meeting to provide an update. The DLUC has now confirmed that it will be going for a reset of the audit market, and they will be working to what they call backstop dates for reporting. So our 22-23 accounts need to be published no later than the 30th of September 2024. And I don't want to steal Mark's thunder from the next meeting, but they will not have time to audit our accounts before that date. So therefore, they will not be offering an opinion on them. So we will be publishing, and he will explain all the ramifications of that and how it will work.
On a reset of which includes a backstop date, but simply creating a backstop date on which accounts will be published without actually putting any extra resources into the audit function itself just means that we will have accounts published, which will be basically our draft accounts, which won't have had a complete external audit. Is that what we're understanding? I think that's something that this committee needs to actually discuss, and that's gonna be an issue for the next committee meeting, and we need to see what the timetable is and what the impacts are for not just the 22-23 accounts, but also what that means for the 23-24 accounts, because by the date of that next meeting, we will have completed 23-24, and what the expectations are for 24-25 going forward.
So as I said, we've already got EY coming to the next meeting to discuss this with the committee and discuss what the impacts of that will be. They have already started work on the 23-24 accounts. So even though we haven't yet finished the year, they've already produced their list of the information that they need us to provide to back up the accounts. We're delivering on all that, as much information as we can in advance of the audit for that. We haven't got audit dates for when it will be, but again, that will be confirmed to us shortly. You're quite right in that the 22-23 accounts will not be audited, and that will have an impact not only on 22-23, but on 23-24 and 24-25 accounts because of the opening balance impacts on those. And again, Mark Hodgson has confirmed that he will answer any questions from committee on how that's to be handled and how that will be impacting on us. And you're also quite right that the May meeting will be busy because we will be bringing the draft 23-24 accounts to that to request approval for publication, albeit if EY haven't issued an opinion on our 22-23 accounts, this is deja vu from last year, then we won't be able to issue our 23-24 accounts because we don't know what the opinion is on the prior year. So I'm really grateful that EY are coming to the next meeting so you can all quiz them and get the answers.
Thank you, Karen.
29th of May.
29th of May, yes. Sorry, Councillor Grady, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, we're very grateful that they're going to be coming to the next meeting as well, because this is, to coin a phrase, an omni-shambles, which is just getting worse because, you know, and they're omni-shambles, not yours. You know, because I don't need to explain to you the ramifications of not having finished one audit before you start another one on the back of that. But one of the things that concerned me as we were going through, well, as we started the saga of 22-23, is this sort of propensity of EY to sort of magic sort of new rabbits out of hats, things that they wanted to look at, stuff that they wanted to talk about. You know, I remember we were looking at revaluations of properties. You know, now we're faffing about with, you know, has the stock market been impacted by the war in Ukraine? It's kind of like, duh, you know, what do you think has happened in 2022? And I find it very frustrating that they just seem to sort of make up stuff as they go along and uncover things. And this is not a complicated authority. We're a pretty standard local authority. Yes, we have a leisure facility. We have a commercial investment and some commercial stuff. But, you know, we're not, this isn't Amazon or, you know, some massive tech company doing something, you know, really funky here. It's pretty standard what we do. And it has baffled me how they have made it as complicated as they have. And I think as a committee, we should be seeing how we can support you. I'm sure you've got something to say about what I've just said, how we can support you in sort of pushing back on what I feel are things that they should have seen earlier and have then gone on to delay the audit and create a lot of extra work, presumably for them.
Karen.
I was very disappointed with the last audit we had and how it was conducted. And I haven't shared it with committee, but there has been a fair amount of correspondence back between myself and EY, particularly around the management of the audit. And we have a different management team coming in for our next audit who, to date, have been very effective and not causing the same issues as we had before. And the workflow does appear to be coming through in a more managed process. So we are hoping that they have listened to us and it will be a simpler process this time. But we also reported our concerns to PSAA, and I had an interview with them back in January where I also talked through how long the process had taken, where we had had our frustrations, and how they've been handled by, or not handled by, EY. So that has been escalated.
Is the old audit team finishing off the old audit and the new audit team doing the new audit, or the new audit team picking up some of the stuff that the old audit team just kind of disappeared and left behind?
It's a mixture. So we have a new audit manager coming in. So we have we keep the same audit partner. Mark Hodgson is consistent across. We have a new audit manager coming in. The work on the 21-22 audit is complete. And the new manager has been working on doing, they still need to do best value on 22-23 accounts. They've pretty well completed that, I understand. And they will be leading on the 23-24 audit.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further questions on this topic? No, if we're all done. So at this point, I need to introduce, or I'd like to introduce a further agenda item, which is obviously not something we normally do. However, it only affects the committee itself. It has no wider ramifications, so hopefully it's not too controversial in terms of the introduction of it. And the issue is that we are looking to form a politically balanced subgroup of about 5 councillors to review the terms of reference of the committee in light of the Local Government Association Audit Review and the CIPFA template, CIPFA being the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, of Councillor Blackwell, in case of need. So that this subgroup will be formed and will take actions to look at the TOR and really make it fit for purpose for the current world that we're in. Are there any questions on that proposal or any concerns?
Are we volunteering today?
I'm sorry?
Are we getting names today for the group?
I think we need to take that away, don't we? Yeah. Obviously, councillors who would be super keen to join the subgroup are very welcome to express their interest, and can't guarantee that everybody who has said yes they'd love to join will join, but we obviously maintain the political balance. But nevertheless, if you're interested, we'd be very keen to hear from you from all sides. Yeah, Councillor Taylor.
Could you give some more details of likelihood of when it would be taking part, the meetings, etc.? So, would it be in the evenings? Would it be during the day? How much time do you have to give to this as well? That'd be interesting to note.
Yeah, I'm happy. Wouldn't be a long protracted process, obviously, in terms of times and so forth. We've got to bear in mind people in full-time employment, and the difficulty of some of us would love to meet during the daytime. It's not necessarily practical for other members. So yeah, in terms of when we do it, obviously we'll have to come back to you on that. Yeah. Karen.
Can I just add a little bit of detail regards the process?
Mm-hmm.
So CIPFA already has model terms of reference, and it was recommended by the LGA peer review that we use those, and talking with a couple of our neighbouring authorities, they use those. So what the proposal is that we have a subgroup to look at the CIPFA model terms of reference and make any necessary tweaks that are required for HCC. I don't know whether they refer to housing stock or things that we don't do. And so it shouldn't be a long protracted process. It is just a sense check of what the terms of reference, the model terms of reference say, whether they are fit for purpose here, and then that is built into a proposal to come back to committee to be discussed and hopefully agreed on.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, as you say, it should be relatively, not protracted and hopefully not too complicated to achieve. I think we just need to take a vote on to make sure people are happy to proceed with this subgroup. So can I just see those in favour, please? That's unanimous. Thank you. Yeah.
Can I just...
David.
Sorry, Councillor, did you want to speak? Sorry. Okay. So you've agreed to the committee. So are you going to give us as officers to go away and organise it? But because we obviously need to have who's going to be exactly on it, the names, so there's no confusion. Once we've got the names, then we have the members together. We can agree when it's going to be, how it's going to operate, etc. I don't want to leave this room tonight with a loose end dangling about. I'm sorry if I'm being a bit. Well, if that's feasible, but then I appreciate that it may not be.
Yeah, I think we just need to be sure that we are politically balanced. I'm very sensitive to the need for that. The answer to the question, do we want democratic services to help us with this? I would say absolutely yes, please. Yeah. Hopefully it won't be too complicated. But in terms of forming the group and finding suitable meeting dates and times, then yeah, we'd appreciate your help with that. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Karen.
Sorry, not trying to put words into people's mouths. Is the action for the committee to delegate responsibility to, I don't know, the chair to create a politically balanced subgroup to review the terms of reference and bring a proposal back to the next meeting?
Exactly right. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So we need to propose and second that.
We've taken a vote that's unanimous. Do we need to come back on that?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah, if they're happy with that and what Karen said.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I don't want to drag this out, but just to make sure you're all happy with what Karen's just said, yes? So we won't suddenly get a surprise 2 weeks down the road. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. Sorry to be bullish. Thank you. Good. Right, so I'll be obviously Karen, myself, the chair, vice chair.
I think
you'll be hearing from us.
Yeah, you can take. I think you can take that as being proposed by myself and seconded by Councillor Harvey here. Thank you. So that's the item. Then, following from that, I just need to give you a couple of updates on where we are with peer reviews. So, the audit peer review has done its feedback process, and we've had an updated report, which is yet to be shared, but will be in due course. That feedback will be, I believe, presented to the May meeting, so you'll have the opportunity to review, see it then and understand what actions are proposed to be taken as a result of that. And the other not related point is about, but also about peer reviews. This is the corporate peer review. So the timescale for the corporate peer review, I think, is around April, May time, as far as I recall. I can't remember the exact dates. But the intention is within the context of that there will be a focus group of corporate governance committee members. So please watch out for an email about this with a diary date, and you're asked, this is a request from Michelle, from our managing director, to let you know if the dates that are not suitable that you can't attend. So in other words, we're trying to make sure that we've got an attendance nailed down as thoroughly as possible. Councillor Ferguson.
So I also spoke to the managing director about this. As we saw from the corporate peer review visit, for the risk and audit peer review visit, their time is incredibly stretched when they're here. It's a kind of they're talking to a lot of people. So if you are offered an opportunity to talk with them, it would be helpful if you could accept that invitation quite quickly so that we can book things in, or if necessary, move them around. But yeah, it's just important that we respond to any invitations we get for those meetings, because there's only limited. They're only here for 2 days. I think there's limited opportunities to shuffle things around.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's also worth just mentioning that it was quite disappointing that in the peer review of the CGC that happened, that hour that we were trying, that the technology worked against us. It was very difficult for us to hear anything if we were dialing in, which made that hour quite less useful.
Yeah, that was very unfortunate, and I'll apologise on behalf of the organisation for that. That was really, unfortunately, it's a technical problem which got sorted out eventually, but it should have been frankly sorted out before we'd even started. It was not good enough. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. So many thanks for your time tonight and a useful session. And we'll see you again next time. Thank you.